Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Honor Roll. This is a show. My name is Wayne Daly, by the way, so it's that clever Daily Honor Roll thing. Not meaning I do it every day, but it's my honor roll, and I'm Wayne Daly, so it's the Daily Honor Roll. You're a pretty intelligent person, or intelligent audience, so I think you can figure it out from there. Listen, I started doing this as a result of listening to Pastor David Furtick of Elevation Church back in North Carolina. And he gave a sermon on honorology or honor roll. Honorology. Honor roll is mine. Honorology is his. But he made an interesting point during his sermon. He's like, why do we wait for people to die before we honor them? You know, the whole eulogy, a funeral. And I've had to do that once or twice, and it's always something you wish that they would have heard. So the Daily Honor Roll is all about letting people know how important they are to me, men, women, how important they are to me while they're still alive, if at all possible. If I know where they're at and know what they're doing, hopefully I'm connected to them either through Twitter or Facebook. So that's the whole purpose of having the Daily Honor Roll. It's just a matter of being able to reach out and tell people what I've seen, how they've impacted me, how they've inspired me. And that's it. It's just, 15, 20 minutes of me rambling. It's unscripted. I just it's a walk down memory lane. And if you know me and it's interesting to you, then you'll listen. If you don't know me, or if it's not interesting to you, then you won't listen. By the way, I podcast this live, so it's on Spreaker.com. It's like it's almost like having an internet radio program. So yeah, there you have it. This morning I'm talking about my friend Christopher Levinson. I say my friend Christopher Levinson. He used to actually be my boss, Christopher Levinson, but even when he was my boss, and I never forgot that he was my boss, he always felt like a friend. He always he was easy to approach. He had a great sense of humor. That whole time of me working at Masri and Vidito, there was few times I walked around there and with fear and loathing. It was a stressful environment, but you knew that the people that you were with, you all knew that you were in it together. The stress was not from one another. The stress was from providing positive results for your clients, or making sure that that those who needed to be brought to justice were brought to justice. Those who needed to pay for something paid for something. So that was the stressful bit. And there's deadlines and everything. Everything you do in the legal industry, there's deadlines. You have filing dates and statutes of limitations and chain of evidence, and there's a lot of stress in the job. So the stress never comes from the people. It comes from the job. And working for Christopher Levinson, he never brought me any stress. He was always a tremendous blessing for me. And that was at work. He was hard to find sometimes. He was always busy. He had meetings. He's the office administrator, or the firm administrator. So he was tough to find sometimes, and that would be stressful. But other than that, I never had any stress. I first met Christopher Levinson in Studio City. When the office was in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard, his office, and I had a cubicle, not even a cubicle. I sat in the bullpen, and he had an office that was maybe 30 feet away. And this is back in the early 90s. When I first met Chris, he was a younger man. Obviously, we were all younger then, but he was very cocky. He was very arrogant. He was very self-assured. And I made those assumptions of him without even knowing him. We had spoken a few times, and I just, he just didn't seem like somebody I was going to take a warming to, because I was cocky and self-assured and arrogant back then, and how dare somebody have an idea that they have all the answers when in fact I do. Anyway, as time progressed, I went from sorting mail to working with the accounting department, being a runner. I had more interaction with Chris, and Chris and I had opportunities to talk and hang out and get to know one another. And we became friendly, although he wasn't really my boss at that time. When we moved to Westlake Village is when Chris and I really, really had a boss employee-employer relationship. And I don't remember too much about working with Chris, although I worked with Chris on a day-to-day, I worked with him every day. What I remember best about Chris are the conversations that he would have with his wife, the unashamed conversations he would have with his wife in front of anybody. And you could always tell when he was on the phone with his wife because his tone would change. Chris speaks very quickly. There are things that need to get done, and like I said, there's always deadlines when you work at a law office. And Chris speaks very intentionally and very quickly. But when he would get on the phone with his wife, and you would know it by just the tone and tempo, it would slow down. There was listening. There was intentional listening. There was an intentional paying attention, and not just to placate. There was an intentional investment. He was a husband. You can tell that the hat changed. Regardless of where he was, the hat changed. When he could take the call, he'd take the call, and then that husband hat would get put on. And he would speak to his wife in a very loving tone, and he would always tell her that he loved her. And he had a nickname for her. And you know what? I'm Chris, I'm going to be honest. If you're listening to this, I've kicked it around back and forth. Didn't know if I should say it or not, and I'm not going to say it. That's your name for her. So, and it was. I got to tell you, Chris, if you're listening, you have had a tremendous impact on me as far as how I love my wife, how I pursue my wife, how I make sure she feels that I pay attention to her. It was 8 years from the last time you and I saw each other until I was a husband. And those lessons stayed with me. I made sure to pay attention, the way you'd pay attention to your son or your daughter. Last time I was in your presence, you had one of each. I don't know if you've had any more. We haven't had any chance to really connect and talk. We should make sure that happens at some point. Like I said, his family is always important. He had, and until we moved to Westlake Village, I'd never been to Chris's house, but I'd been over to the house a few times, and not only did I get to see Chris on the phone with his wife, I got to see him interact with her in the house, which was priceless. I got to see Chris as a dad. Part of the inspiration of seeing my friend Chris as a father, help me build the desire, embrace the desire to move to Arizona to be closer to my own son. So Christopher Levinson is responsible for the relationship I have, in part, for the relationship I have with my son today. So again, there's just another level of gratitude there. He's an attentive father. He paid attention to his kids. He spoke to his children. He didn't talk at them. He talked to them. He listened to them. Yeah. So the story, my best story is when I was leaving Southern California, when I was leaving the law offices of Mazarine Vitta to go strike out into a new life in Tucson, Arizona from Los Angeles. My life in Los Angeles was dying, or it actually had been dead for a while. But being stubborn, I was trying to breathe life into it. When I finally decided to pull the plug on the life support system, which is just hilarious because it was not really a life. Anyway, it's not about me. We had a going away party at the Shooting Star, which is a country restaurant bar up on Universal City Walk. And a lot of the people from my life in LA had come out to say goodbye. There was men from the men's division. There was people that I worked with. There was friends from the various bars or nightclubs that I would hang out in. Everybody seemed to come together and Chris was not there. Again, he's a husband, he's a father. He doesn't need to go gallivanting about in a bar, on a whatever night it was. But what Chris had done, instead of being at my going away party, Chris had kind of been able to work out a little bit of a going away present of his own, and actually it was on behalf of the firm as well. But I got to spend a little bit of extra time with Chris before I moved and said goodbye for good. There was a Comdex event, which is it's a computer expo in Las Vegas, and it just happened to be the week that I was leaving. So what I was able to do, I loaded up my truck with everything that I owned because I moved here with next to nothing. Actually, I had moved all the stuff out before another friend of mine, Greg, had helped me move most of my major stuff out. This is when I was leaving. The last of my stuff loaded up in my truck, and Chris had asked me if I would go attend Comdex with him for at least a couple days. And I said I would. So, he's off to Vegas. So I drove to Vegas and I met him at Vegas. He had a great room at Caesars Palace. So I got to stay at Caesars Palace. My one and only time of staying at Caesars Palace. It was a great experience. We went to Comdex. We basically shopping for computer systems for the new office, or at that point it was a relatively new office. They were looking to upgrade some stuff, and we went and we shopped the Comdex, and then we just kind of kicked around town. We didn't see any shows or anything, but we hung out. We had lunch. We had lunch at a buffet. After lunch, Chris treated me to a spa day. I'd never had a spa day where you go and you sit in the big sauna, and then you get the massage. And then after that, back to the room, and it was nap time. And then after nap time, we woke up. We went to dinner at Ruth's Chris, which was the first time I ever ate at that steakhouse. I had a bone-in ribeye, and it was a phenomenal dinner. It was a great time to spend a little one-on-one time with a friend and a mentor. And I remember that time. I remember that time was very, very cool. We went back to the hotel that night. The next morning, had breakfast together, and I took off, and I drove out to Tucson. And I've seen Chris a couple of times since then. He's always very busy, and when I show up unannounced on the doorstep, it's not like he can drop everything. We were going to try and get lunch in the last time that I was in California and showed up at the office. I showed up with my new bride, Christina, so that everybody at the office could meet Christina. I got to have lunch with Jan and a couple of the girls. And Melissa was there. But Chris and I haven't really been able to connect since. We're friends on Facebook and follow each other on Twitter, so I can keep up. Chris doesn't post anything on Facebook that's not business related. You would not know Chris's personality from social media. You won't see it on LinkedIn, you won't see it on Twitter, you won't see it on Facebook. But if you have an opportunity to get to know the man, it would be a benefit to you in your life. There's that cocky, arrogant, self-assured man. He's not those things. What it is he is very self-assured. Cocky and arrogant don't fit, though. He knows who he is. He knows who he is as a husband, and he knows who he is as a father. He knows who he is as the office administrator for the Vidito Law Group. He doesn't have a whole lot of self-doubt, and that's a very attractive thing. And in fact, that's as men who don't have that will see cocky and arrogant. Now that I know who I am as a husband and father, I know that I should have never measured him as cocky and arrogant. However, knowing who he is has been a tremendous impact on my life. For himself to know who he is has been a tremendous impact on his children and his wife. And Chris, I take my hat off to you. I would give you the highest possible recommendation, salute. I just honor you as a man, and a friend and a mentor, which is hard to say mentor because he's like 3 years older than me. How can you have a mentor that's 3 years older than you? That's kind of crazy. No, not really. It's not crazy at all. Age doesn't matter. If you find a man who can speak into your life the way Chris has spoken into my life, you're blessed. And don't discredit it or discount it just because there's not that big of an age difference, or that man happens to be maybe a few years younger than you. Doesn't matter. Chris, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know my wife would thank you. My sons, thank you. I appreciate you very much. I wish you the best of luck and many, many blessings in everything that you do to further the cause at Vidito Law Group. Again, my name is Wayne Daly. I am the president and founder of Man Tucson Ministries here in Tucson, Arizona. It's a ministry dedicated to be a resource to the local church and men for the purpose of accountability through reconciliation, restoration, and regeneration. You can find us at www.mantucson.org. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Again, this has been the Daily Honor Roll for October 7th, 2013, giving honor to my good friend and mentor, Christopher Levinson. God bless you and have a wonderful day.